Little something I made up. Hi, this is TJR from Music Worth Buying, and you're probably aware of the fact that Atlantic Records has re-released the first 3 Led Zeppelin albums. These albums have been released in a couple of different formats, but I'm going to be concentrating on just the 2 CD disc editions. These have been re-released with expanded packaging, which we'll be talking about in a minute. The original albums have been remastered, and also they've all including an additional bonus CD with unreleased material. So first of all, let's just get right down to the remastering of the original albums. Chances are, if you're watching this video, you probably already own these albums. So the first question is, how good is the remastering? Is it worth buying the albums again for? For just the remastering alone, I would say no. I've compared these new remasters to my original discs. I'm going off the original 80s remasters, and to be honest, I don't hear any significant difference. Nothing that's going to make me say, yeah, you've got to repurchase these again, okay? If you've never owned these albums before, I would probably say this is a good time to get them, get these new editions, because you're going to get a lot of extras with it. And but we'll get to that in a moment. So let's get back to these remasters. Once again, I don't hear any significant, huge difference to make you want to repurchase them. So now the question is it worth repurchasing for these additional bonus discs? Well, this is going to be a kind of a subjective thing, but I'm going to talk about what's on these bonus discs, and hopefully this will help you out here. Now, Led Zeppelin I features a live concert from 1969. This concert was recorded after the release of Led Zeppelin I, but before the release of Led Zeppelin II. But you do get to hear them performing some songs from Led Zeppelin II while they're still in the development stage. This is kind of interesting. But to be honest, this disc here, I personally didn't find this worth shelling out the extra money to get. There are some good performances on this disc, and quite frankly, I feel that there are also some sloppy ones too. I am sure that everything possible has been done to master and EQ the original source material of these performances to make them sound as good as they possibly can, but I really don't think the original source material was all that good to begin with. And quite frankly, there are better Zeppelin concert recordings out there. Other than the fact that you get to hear some of Zeppelin II performed, it's kind of interesting to hear, you know, what those songs sounded like in development. The only other thing I can recommend it for is that in songs like I Can't Quit You Baby, you really get to hear what a powerhouse lead vocalist Robert Plant was during these early days when he was really in his prime. Now, Zeppelin II and III don't feature any live performances. Instead, they feature rough and alternate mixes of the tracks from these albums. They feature what are called backing tracks, which I'll describe in a little bit more detail in just a moment, and even a few new tracks. Now, right off the bat, I find this type of material way more interesting than what was on Zeppelin I. So let's talk about those. Now in the liner notes, Page describes these tracks as a portal to the time period of these recordings. I feel that the rough and alternate mixes sometimes are as good and as enjoyable to listen to as what's on the final CD. Other times I find them at least interesting to listen to. And I think that they all provide a very kind of interesting look behind the curtain to see how these songs developed during the recording process. Now, some of the rough and alternate mixes highlights on Zeppelin II include a rough mix of Whole Lotta Love, which features a different vocal take than what we're used to hearing. This version also features no trace of the signature chorus that we're used to hearing as well. One gets the idea listening to this version that the song was originally going to be called You Need Love. And there's also an alternate mix of Heartbreaker, which features a completely different guitar solo take as well. Also on the supplementary disc for Zeppelin II, the track Moby Dick gives us an edited version minus the drum solo in the middle. So we just get the musical portion with guitar, bass, and drums, and then a quick little segue into the last half of it. Once again, this is without the drum solo in the middle. Now, I know I'm going to be catching quite a bit of hell for saying this, but personally, I never really got into listening to the drum solo on Moby Dick. I always just kind of fast-forwarded and went to the ending. Although I did really enjoy the Moby Dick and Bonzo's Montreux mashup from the original 80s Zeppelin box set. I enjoyed that quite a bit. Now, Zeppelin III's rough and alternate tracks, some of the highlights on that include an alternate mix of Immigrant Song. I found this to be quite enjoyable as the finished version. Immigrant Song's alternate mix brings out the vibrato guitar that was previously buried. It was always there, but it was just buried in the final mix. And also some very different vocal chants from Robert Plant during the song's fade out. That's the Way is another real highlight off of this album. It's one of my favorite Zeppelin tracks of all time. And this alternate version lets you hear some just very beautiful guitar textures that were either not included on the finished version or that simply just got washed out with all the other tracks, all the other guitar orchestration that was included, and also just the track's overall reverb effect. Now, both bonus discs feature what are called backing track songs. Now, what these are the finished versions of the songs, but just minus the vocal. They've been taken out. To be honest, I'm not sure what the purpose of these types of tracks are, and I've seen other re-releases do this sort of thing. The Beatles, if you remember the Beatles anthology versions, did this too. I really was impressed by Eleanor Rigby as just the string quartet without the vocals. That was very impressive. But overall, sometimes I don't think these things accomplish much. I'm guessing that maybe Jimmy Page thought they were good enough on their own as instrumentals. Maybe he also just wanted to show off what the band was doing. That certainly accomplishes that as well. I thought that Friends off of Zeppelin III worked very well as an instrumental track. I'm not sure that Thank You from Zeppelin II necessarily did. I feel like those have a limited amount of listening enjoyment to them. You might in future listens end up skipping them. Now there are also some new tracks, and this is the real highlight of both these two CDs. Now, Led Zeppelin II features an instrumental track, and it's entitled La La / Intro Outro. Obviously just a working title, and it's instrumental only in that I get the feeling listening to it that they never got around to completing any vocal tracks for it. It's fun to listen to just on its own, though. It's very flower power sounding. It's kind of untypical for Led Zeppelin, and that's maybe that was why they kept it out. I'm not sure. But it is really a good, solid track, even without a vocal, and it's very enjoyable. I remember a while back when the Rolling Stones re-released Exile on Main Street with a bonus disc. They had some tracks that were unfinished, had the music portion done, but no lyrics, no vocals. And so Mick Jagger wrote some new lyrics and recorded some new vocals and basically finished these songs. I think it would have been really great if Robert Plant had been asked to come in and do the same thing, write some lyrics and do some new vocals and finish it. Maybe he was never asked, maybe he just didn't want to, who knows. But it would have been cool to actually have that finished. But it's still enjoyable either way, irregardless. Now, Zeppelin III has two new tracks on it. The first one is called Jennings Farm Blues. It's also instrumental, and it was clearly abandoned because when you listen to it, you can hear elements of both Celebration Day and Braniar. Hopefully I've pronounced that title correctly. Or Braniar Stomp, excuse me. Obviously, they were working on this and then realized that they could better mine the ideas from this song into these other two songs, Celebration Day and Braniar Stomp. So they just abandoned it. It's cool to listen to. It's the second one, though, that's the real treasure. It's a cool little acoustic blues number entitled Keys to the Highway, Trouble in My Mind. It's fully complete with vocals, and it's a really great track. Surprised this was never released prior, but glad we finally have it here. And so that gives you a little bit of a rundown on what's on there. And once again, you can listen to these bonus CDs and the remasters on Spotify. If you have Spotify Premium, I know that they're there. You can stream them in their entirety. I use Spotify. I have Spotify Premium for $10 a month. It's well worth it. And I encourage using that service. Anyways, though, but let's talk about the packaging. Now, I'm going to show here the packaging for Led Zeppelin III. Now, when you see it in the store, it's going to look like this. In fact, all of the editions have this, what we call a negative reverse version of the original cover. Flip it around, there's the original cover right there. Now, here's some of the cool things they've done. Now, first of all, it's a three-way fold-out, like this. But first of all, when we get here to this portion here of the original front cover, it's got a working pinwheel, just like the original vinyl release did. And so, just from this alone, the original two albums were a gate. Second album was a gatefold. The first one was just a regular single sleeve. But based on this, I would assume that any type of unique or special packaging that was done on the original vinyl, they're going to replicate here. And clearly, from the inside, they're making sure that you get a replication of all the original artwork from the album. This would have been the interior of the original gatefold of the original album, and right here in the middle we have what was originally the back cover of that gatefold album, of that original vinyl release. So they're reproducing all the original art. Here we have a reproduction here, the same as here, so that they can give you the track listing of the original album and the supplementary disc. And there you go. Don't know if the single disc edition is doing this or not. I haven't really looked at them, but I'm assuming that if you're thinking about getting these, you're going to go for the 2-disc edition. I don't see why you shouldn't. You should probably spend a couple more dollars if you are going to get it at all, especially if you already own them. You should go with this edition because I don't think you're going to get anything significant, at least so far, from the remastering job on the original album. So I'm glad to see them do that. Now, also included in these 2-disc editions is a supplementary booklet as well. Once again, I don't know if these come in the single disc editions. If you know, please share that information with us. These booklets feature lots of great photos. But unfortunately, aside from the liner notes at the end, no real information. No essay, no notes from Jimmy Page or any Robert Plant or John Paul Jones. Just nothing at all. As far as any information about the making of the albums, any reminiscences about the album, any historical essay about the album, just nothing at all. I wish there had been some text, some written information. I was hoping for that, but we do have some nice pictures, but it's still a bit of a disappointment. I wish there had been something else. Maybe Jimmy Page feels that the music just speaks for itself, that he doesn't need to really talk about it. I don't know, maybe that's his feeling about it. Because I know that he was involved in producing these re-releases here. Just the liner notes on both the original album and liner notes on the unreleased material as well. And that's it. Glad the booklet's there, just wish it had a little bit more. And so that's about it. So I've not heard the vinyl releases of these. These are also being re-released on 180-gram audiophile vinyl. First time this has ever happened as far as I know. If you've heard these vinyl renditions and you have had a chance to compare them to the CD release, please share with us your thoughts. Please share with us how you feel about those these vinyl releases, re-releases, I should say, and tell us what you think. I'd be curious to know myself. And so that's about it. It's kind of a subjective thing, I guess, and it's kind of up to you whether or not you feel this bonus disc warrants purchasing the album all over again. Of course, if you've never bought the Zeppelin catalog before, you should go for these versions. I think it's great to get these 2-disc editions here. One thing I will say about the remastering job, it was not compressed, or over-compressed, I should say. When you listen to Tangerine, the quiet part of the opening is very quiet. You actually find yourself turning it up a little bit, and then when the band kicks in, turn it down a little bit. And I know some people find that annoying, but that lets me know this was not over-compressed. The fact that there is some dynamic range, which means you preserve the emotion of the performance of the players. When you over-compress it and make everything one volume, you lose all that emotion of the performance, and it becomes this boring, flat, compressed sound. And anyway, so I will say that much about these remasters. They did not over-compress them. And so that's about it. Do you agree with what I've said about these remasters? Let us know. And what are your experiences with them? How do you feel about them? Which ones have you checked out? Please let us know your thoughts and share it with everybody else. Until next time, this is TJR. Thank you so much for watching Music Worth Buying.